Lord's table is always the central part of our worship service as the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. We've sometimes been called a people of the table by other Christian denominations, mainline denominations, because we're one of the only mainline denominations that have communion as a part of our weekly worship time. What's unique about the Christian Church Disciples of Christ is that we don't need a minister to officiate or administer the emblems of bread and wine at the table. When we were a young movement, and we weren't a denomination, but in our early years in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, we were a movement. A brotherhood, as the name was back in those days. But so many churches did not have pastors. They couldn't afford a full-time pastor. And so elders would lead the worship service. And so that's the tradition of elders serving at the table. A lot of disciple churches, even when I began the ministry, would have the minister sat in the chair after the sermon. It's like, okay, you're done for the day. We're taking over now. And so the elders would administer at the table. That was true in the church that I grew up in. We are a people for whom no worship is complete without communion. And that's because at the communion table, we share this moment in our worship service where we seek the oneness of the church, as our early founder, Barton Stone, said, unity is our polar star. And so we see in this meal a reflection of what Christ meant when he prayed for the unity and the oneness of his believers. It was his dream, Jesus' dream, that we embody a oneness in mind, body, and spirit. When Jesus was gathered with his disciples at the table, according to the Gospel of John, he prayed that they might be one. And so we seek to manifest that oneness with each other. And World Communion Sunday is one of the special times. It was developed by a Presbyterian pastor, but then Jesse Bader, who was in a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, also really took the idea of World Communion Sunday and established it as one of the main Sundays of the year when Christians around the world can come together, despite our languages, despite our cultures. And it's here that we just demonstrate our unity. We embody our oneness because we share a common story. And that story is what we find in the New Testament, the story about the way of Jesus Christ. We worship a common God. We follow a common path. We do so in many different ways, but we embody that oneness, and communion links us together. So one of the places, I know the script, I'm really off script, but toward the bottom of the first page and for the third screen, one of the places that we visited on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem was the church of Patron Noster, which means, again, our Father. And it's one of the three early churches in Jerusalem. This site has a long tradition which holds that it was in this place that Jesus taught the Lord's Prayer. First in a grotto, or a cave, that is found under the present church in which our group was led through during our visit there. Emperor Constantine, in 330 AD, 3 centuries after Jesus, declared Christianity a legal religion and sent his mom, Helen, to the Holy Land to discover as many of the holy sites as she could. And this was one of the places that she went and built a church. It's called the Church of the Eleona. Eleona is the Greek word which means of olives. It was found on the mount, near the mount, the summit of the Mount of Olives. The Crusaders came 9 centuries later, and in the 1100s built a church and renamed it the Pater Noster, the Church of Our Father, as a site to remember Jesus teaching his disciples the Lord's Prayer. So it became, it shifted from a group where Jesus would meet to the Church of the Eleona during the time of Constantine, and then in the Crusader area of the 12th century, it became the Church of Pater Noster. And pilgrims reported in that time, in the 1100s, early 1200s, they reported, those who visited Jerusalem, of seeing the words of a prayer written in Hebrew and Greek on marble plaques. And excavations began in 1911 and uncovered a marble plaque in Latin. They've not found original ones in Hebrew and Greek, but they did find an original one in Latin. At the Church of the Pater Noster, Christians recall Christ's teaching of the Lord's Prayer. And so on the walls around the church are translations of the Lord's Prayer in 140 languages that are inscribed on these beautiful ceramic plaques that you see. And so when we visited in June, when we visited the Church of the Pater Noster, we thought it would be a really cool idea to film the reading of some of these plaques and to share it on World Communion Sunday, because World Communion Sunday celebrates the ethnicity of our world, languages of it. And so that's what we did. The church that is there today, that when you enter this cloister and area, the present church was built in 1874 by an Italian woman who was the widow of a French prince, and her name was Daryl de Bossi. She was the Princess of de la Tour d'Avignon. She erected translations of this prayer in 39 different languages. That was back in 1874. It's grown to now over 140. The princess was keenly interested in this original grotto, or the cave where Jesus met with his disciples. And it was never discovered, but she suggested where she thought that it might be. That is the present cave or grotto underneath this church. So archaeologists began excavating here in 1911, and they found the cave exactly where she thought it was, where she led them to be. The cave under the Pater Noster Church certainly existed in Jesus' time, and professional archaeologists have all agreed that the cave, the grotto, goes back to the 1st century of when Jesus would have been with his disciples. We know that he often retreated to the Mount of Olives. It was his place to go. Whether it's the exact site, who knows? But the site has very early traditions of where he met. Then it would have been secluded and sheltered, a place for one to escape the crowds of Jerusalem, to go to the Mount of Olives, to pray, to rest, and to spend a night. The Crusaders remember this also as a place of Jesus' ascension. There are early references to Jesus' teaching in this spot. There is in the apocryphal Acts of John, which dates from the 2nd century, about 90 years after the life of Christ, there is a writing that does mention Jesus' teaching in this place. Not the Lord's Prayer, but it does mention Jesus meeting here. And then Eusebius, one of the great church fathers in 330 AD, also mentions this place. Okay, enough history about the Pater Noster. Communion and the Lord's Prayer are always together in the liturgical tradition of the church. Communion is a call to the Christ path, to the work of healing the sick, to the work of forgiveness, tearing down walls that divide and bringing people together. It's a call to the work of providing shelter for those who are homeless, of feeding the hungry, and healing the sick. That's our call in a nutshell. That's what the Lord's Prayer is about. It's one of the teachings that we have from Jesus to his disciples, to the church that has come after him in every decade and century. That's our call. And so when we participate in communion, we are connecting with Jesus Christ to our call and what Jesus is expecting us to do. So in that sense, Jesus planted seeds for our future. Jesus planted seeds for us to follow in his path, in his teaching, and gave us a prayer which we recite every Sunday for 2,000 years. In today's lesson from the Gospel of Luke, strange lesson that Melody read to you, Jesus' own disciples say, we can't do this. We're not up for the job. And they say in verse 5 of chapter 17 of the Gospel of Luke, Lord, increase our faith. Give us more faith. Because we can't do this. The work is too hard for us. And the disciples didn't have the resources nor the freedom to do nearly what we are able to do. And Jesus says, you know what? Let me tell you this. He says, have a little more faith. And then he told them that they need to be ready to forgive when somebody offends them. And then he instructed his disciples to care for the poor. The disciples didn't believe they were ready for the life. They didn't believe that they had the resources and the wisdom to carry it out or the strength. And so Jesus takes a seed, much smaller than an apple seed, but I didn't have a mustard seed. Jesus takes a mustard seed or an object lesson, and then he says, look at the little seed. If you have faith as tiny as that, then you're prepared for the job. All it takes is just a little bit of faith and belief in yourself that you can do it. Because if you have that much faith, you can move mountains. They simply need faith. And Jesus points to the smallest of seeds that he can find and says, with that amount of faith, you're going to be able to produce really great works. Planting is an act of faith, church. And so our ministry of giving theme is planting seeds for the future. So I want you to know, planting is an act of faith. We take what we've got and we give it away. That's what planting is all about. That's the way the world works. Just look around you. Nature, trees, the cosmos, the energy of the sun, they all teach us a simple lesson. They're giving their life away for us, and we should do the same to give our life away so that others might live. The challenge, church, is this. What seeds are you going to plant today? You all have faith. We got that down. You were here. What seeds are you going to plant? What kind of effects do you see in yourself and others when you plant a seed and give of yourself? The next 4 weeks is an opportunity. It's not like another pledge drive. It's not like another envelope that comes in the mail from a college or an organization or something. It's an opportunity to give ourselves away in service and to plant seeds for those who will come after us. Everything in life starts as a seed, as I told the children. And there is great joy when we plant a seed and we see it grow. This little tree out here is testimony to that. Dee planted that tree how many years ago? Dee Rory. How many years ago?
I didn't plant
You didn't plant it? Who did? Didn't you buy it?
No.
All right. Well, you knew about it. You are who I associate with that tree. Does anybody know? Scott, I'm so sorry. All right. How many years ago did you plant that tree?
5 years.
5 years ago. It seems like a lot longer than that. But for the first 2 years, that tree didn't grow. It didn't grow. It stayed small. We thought it was going to die. But you nurtured it, you loved it, and look at it today. So if you don't know what tree I'm talking about, it's the only spruce tree out in the yard there. 5 years. And it's a joy to watch it grow. Planting seeds is an act of faith. Let's be about that work, church. We offer an invitation for you to come and be a part of a community that seeks to bring life to the community around us through the services that we offer. A place of meeting for many different groups, Scouts, AA, NA, the Women of Bethany, our own organizations in the life of the church. Come be a part of a movement that seeks wholeness in a fragmented world.